Okay, welcome everyone to this session. I think we'll have people coming in now, but for the sake of time, I will just start the introductions before we go into the main thing. So this session is introducing a handbook for mobile data for development. And on this session, we have 3 speakers. In no particular order, I will just introduce them. So the first speaker I'll be introducing is Rachel Sibande. She's the Senior Director, Country Outreach, Digital Impact Alliance. And Rachel said, Director, she's a Digital Development Specialist. Rachel has established Malawi's first Technology and Innovation Hub, M-Hub, which incubates and accelerates emerging innovative entrepreneurs. Rachel of big data for development demonstration models in Africa and has extended technology-led development projects in digital financial services, public health, agriculture, disaster management, and elections monitoring in more than 14 countries. Rachel became a Google team, being a recipient of Google's Anita Borg Award. Rachel has been listed twice by Forbes as one of Africa's 30 under 30 entrepreneurs in 2016, the new wealth creator in 2019. Ms. Sibande has just completed a PhD in computer science at Rhodes University in South Africa. You're welcome, Rachel. Next up, I'll be introducing Trish Dorsey. She's the program manager at Digital Impact Alliance Dial, passionate about storytelling, and has a proven track record of leading cross-functional teams from project initiation to closing. She joined the Digital Impact Alliance in March 2020 and plays a pivotal role in the planning, execution, and dissemination of products that support DIAL's overall strategy and goals. Before joining DIAL, Trish spent 13 years at National Geographic, where she helped manage 3 full-scale site redesigns and led the creation of over 95 custom interactive websites and campaigns. Prior to National Geographic, Trish worked with the nonprofit Outward Bound, leading in experiential and environmental education. Trish has a BSc in psychology from Virginia Tech and is a certified Scrum Master and member of the project. Wow, Trish, you're welcome. All right. I'll be introducing Emmanuel Letu. I just learned that one now. He's the director. He's the director of Data Population 2013 with groups at MIT and Harvard. A Marie Curie Fellow at the University of Fabra, Barcelona. He wrote UN Global Pulse's Big Data for Development in 2012, and he worked as an economist for UNDP in New York from 2006 to 2010, and for the French government in Vietnam as a technical assistant in official statistics from 2004. He has a BA in political science and an MA in applied economics, economic demography from Sciences Po Paris, an MA in international affairs, economic development from Columbia University, where he was a Fulbright Fellow, and a PhD in demography from Berkeley in 2016, where his dissertation focused on big data for demo economic research. You're welcome, Emmanuel.
Thank you.
So we have loaded panelists here. You're all welcome. Good to have you all here. So I'll just run through the session. In this, a guiding source for mobile for development, MD for development, and walk through its uses and its purpose. To put this into perspective, the MD4D guidebook can be used by various stakeholders in the data for development ecosystem, particularly decision makers and middle managers across a diverse spectrum, encompassing but not limited to mobile network operators, statistical offices, national regulatory authorities, NGOs, development practitioners, academic researchers, officials, technical practitioners, amongst others. So I'll turn it over to the speakers now to just take us through this very interesting. Over to you, Rachel.
Oh, Chibi, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me now for that kind introduction for me and my colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here today. And as Chibi has mentioned, greetings to all our viewers today from all the various corners of the world, and welcome to this session once again. Me and my colleagues, Emmanuel and Trish, are going to be talking about a handbook for mobile data for development. My humble duty this afternoon is to give context to why we have come up with this mobile data for development handbook, and also to give context to what mobile data for development is. As you heard from Chibi, my name is Rachel Sibande, and I work as Senior Director Country Outreach at the Digital Impact Alliance. Now, what is data for development? From our perspective, when we talk about data for development, we're referring to the use of data that is generated by mobile devices, satellite, and digital devices. Now, this is data that has the potential to generate insights that can improve decision-making for public sector, for service delivery, and humanitarian action. Now, when we were set up as the Digital Impact Alliance, we were tasked to explore the use of data for development to enhance public sector decision making. The question was, can we integrate data from mobile network operators in particular with other digital data sources to answer key questions in development that could improve service delivery of essential services to the people that need the most. It could be health services, it could be water, it could be sanitation, you name it, it's a whiteboard. Now, I also want to emphasize before I move on that we do make emphasis on ensuring that this data is used in a safe and responsible way that respects individuals' privacy and safeguards personal data. So no personally identifiable information is exposed or used in most of the projects that we embark on. If it is personally identifiable information, it is appropriately anonymized or masked in a way that it cannot be unmasked to expose and identify individuals. Now, talking about mobile network data itself, within mobile network operator data, there are many data sets, and as much, there are also many insights that could be generated from this data. These insights range from very basic insights to even more complex insights. But to put perspective and to give an example, you could have data around the age or the gender of individuals. This is important data that can generate insights to help us understand demographics of the population. When you look at call detail records, it provides us insight into location data, which is useful to help us understand insights such as population density, migration patterns of people, whether in the short term, long term, or even seasonally. Again, looking at purchase data, for example, how people recharge their airtime, the frequency of recharge, the denomination of recharge, the volume, the amount of recharge, and some of the payments that are made using mobile platforms, we can also generate income profile indexes by looking at mobile network operator data. So there's many insights and data sets that can be generated from using mobile network operator data. What is more interesting is that these insights that I mentioned as examples can actually be used to answer some of the most critical development questions. For example, the location data can help us to understand where governments should be placing new health facilities to reach the people that need the most, because now governments understand better how people move seasonally in the short term or even in the long term. It could help us to understand how people are adhering to the lockdown in this era of COVID-19, but even more importantly, where to anticipate COVID-19 hotspots by just understanding the population density and dynamics or movement patterns of people. And so as the Digital Impact Alliance, we embarked on exploring making investments in mobile data for development, where we invested in a three-pronged approach. First is investments into data demonstration models at country level. We've worked in countries such as Malawi on a public health use case, in Tanzania on an immunization use case, and in Uganda on a food security use case, just to mention a few. Within these countries, we've worked with partners which include the governments themselves, which are the ultimate end users of the insights from these data models. We've also worked with regulatory authorities who are the epitome and the custodian. We've also worked and partnered with the mobile network operators that have provided data in a safe and responsible way, and elsewhere where they've provided access to from this data that can be used to answer key development questions. Aside of that, we've also worked with NGO partners that work very closely on a day-to-day basis, supporting these governments to improve their institutional capacities to deploy more sustainable digital and data for development initiatives. Secondly, we also made investments in open source technology solutions. We've made investments in FlowMinder and Opal. With FlowMinder, for example, we have made investment in the development of an open source technology platform called FlowKit. This is a platform that is used to analyze mobile network operator data to answer key development questions. Why these investments? Well, before these, it was very difficult for data for development practitioners to find open source technology solutions that they could use to analyze telco data. As you'd imagine, MNO data or data from mobile network operators comes in very large volumes. I mean, imagine everyone making calls, texting every day, and then you looking at that data for an entire country. It is huge and voluminous. And therefore, to generate the key insights for development, you need technology solutions that are specially curated to analyze such data. Lastly, we worked around various use cases, but I just wanted to highlight three main use cases where we've generated some of the most interest at a country level. These have been healthcare, in agriculture, and disaster. For example, in Malawi, we worked with the government through the Ministry of Health to leverage the power of mobile network operator data when combined with other digital health datasets to answer the question of where the Ministry of Health should be deploying 900 new health posts across the country in the next 5 years in a way that takes into consideration population density, short-term migration patterns, long-term migration patterns, and seasonal movement patterns of people. Now, using the model that we developed together with the Ministry of Health and our NGO partners, Cooper Smith, the government now has a model that will ensure that in the next 5 years, if followed, they can improve access to health services to almost 40% of the population that is currently living outside of a 5-kilometer radius of a health facility. In Uganda, we worked on a food security monitoring use case that predicts crop yield for maize and sorghum in certain regions and combines those insights with the population density and migration patterns of people in relation to movement of people from areas of low crop yield to areas that anticipate high crop yield. Lastly, in Mozambique, we're working on a disaster management use case to understand displacement patterns of people after disaster and to also predict the same before disaster strikes. All these are there to help governments make better decisions around public service delivery. Now, there are a number of lessons that we are learning from this work. But I just wanted to highlight one lesson quickly, which is we've learned that there are actually not as many guidance tools or resources for practitioners within the mobile data for development space to use if they were to start off to put together a mobile data for development initiative. And so this is one lesson that we've learned in doing the work that I mentioned in the countries, but also with the tech partners in making investments in data for development that motivated us to develop the Mobile Data for Development Handbook. And so today, we are offering insight into the various partnership models, operation models, business models, the open source technology platforms, but also best practices on responsible data use. And as part of this, we believe that what success will look like for such mobile data for development initiatives is when we can reach a time that mobile data for development initiatives become routine, they become repeatable, they can be replicable across development sectors, across geographies, they can scale and become more sustainable. Now, this is not going to happen if it is only the Digital Impact Alliance that has to convince stakeholders to deploy mobile data for development initiatives, or if it is only Data Pop Alliance that has to convene or go to implement and support the deployment of data for development initiatives. We believe that this is only going to happen if there can be resources that potential mobile for development practitioners can pick and follow through to guide them to deploy and set up their own MD4D initiatives, even without DIAL or indeed without Data Pop Alliance. And so this is the reason why we put together the Mobile Data for Development Handbook. We hope that the practitioners that pick up this resource can deploy mobile data for development initiatives that are repeatable, that can replicate across geographies, across development sectors, and those that can actually scale beyond pilots and beyond sectoral fragmented use cases. But we are hoping that we can see more mobile data for development initiatives across the board for agriculture use cases, for health use cases, disaster management use case, water management use case, digital financial services use case, you name it, it's a whiteboard. And so join us today as we hear from my colleague, Emmanuel Lechuze, who is going to take us through in the next few minutes around a preview and a sneak peek into the MD4D handbook. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. So I will take over the screen and share my screen, so hoping that it works. So yeah, let me know if it does work.
Yes, we can see your screen, Manu.
Okay, great. So yeah, so thank you very much, Rachel, for this very comprehensive, very clear introduction to some of the objectives and of the handbook, the starting points. And thank you also to the whole DIAL team. I mean, it was really like a nice like project that we worked on together. And thank you, of course, to the organizers for the opportunity. So to present this MD4D handbook that we've been developing for the past almost year now, and so this is the first time that we show it live. So you can see here the handle at the top. It will be available. I mean, we'll share also the link on social media, and so. I mean, first, so Rachel mentioned Shibi in her introduction mentioned the fact that, so I worked at UN Global Pulse almost 10 years ago, and wrote this first report called Big Data for Development Challenges and Opportunities. And so indeed, for the past decade, as Rachel mentioned, we as an ecosystem, as a community, have been arguing that and how those kinds of digital breadcrumbs, and especially, I would say, call detail records, so cell phone metadata, could help monitor and achieve the SDGs and other like developmental goals. But at the same time, we've been facing a lot of hurdles and challenges that Rachel mentioned. Legal, ethical, cultural, financial, and so so it seemed, I think, to some of us who have been in this field for a long time that by now we sort of know how to do it, that it's been done, and so maybe there is a question about why this why this handbook is it really needed? What is the audience? And what purpose does it serve? And so I would just say, before giving you a sneak peek into the handbook, that I think it is really needed. Like, even after 10 years, just from experience recently, I won't name the country or the countries, but as Data Pop Alliance, we've tried like developing a small pilot project with a National Statistical Office, with a mobile network operator, and we made the case and we presented, and we're very careful in how we explained the benefits, how this is going to work technically. But in the end, it didn't work out. And I think it didn't work out because a lot of people outside of our little like circles are still concerned. They don't really know where to start. They don't really know what resource. There are lots of resources, including many which are featured in the handbook, but it's not centralized. It's not always very user friendly, and so I think, especially seeing the result of the work, that it's really worth it. And so you see here, so hopefully you can see the screen like changing as I click. So you see this is the general structure here on the left-hand side of the handbook. And of course, so first there is an overview with, as I mentioned, a summary of the purpose, and then a summary of the content here. So the different modules which are summarized, and I think something that's a way of looking at it is indeed, and it's said here. It's like, think of it as when you buy a computer or when you buy a TV, you have a like a manual, like a guide. I mean, sometimes, at least to me, it's very scary because I always think and feel that it's not going to work, that something is going to go wrong. Often it does, and so hopefully in this case it will actually be a good, like, step-by-step guide for how to develop an MD4D project. And so the first module covers some conceptual, contextual elements about some key terms, a brief history of the field. It makes the case for the opportunity. I think importantly of the principles for digital development, which have been spearheaded by DIAL, so which are a set of principles inspired by other ethical guidelines that aim to ensure participation, inclusion, sustainability, and so on and so forth in digital projects in general. And you can become, or your organization can endorse and hopefully enforce those principles. And then there are several examples, as Rachel mentioned, in different themes or different fields, from disaster management, economic indicators, urban planning, and so on and so forth. Of course, recently with COVID, we as a community, but also as I think as societies, I think we would have benefited greatly from there being systems in place, so technological standards, governance systems, ethical like guidelines for sharing, for making those kinds of data available for the response to COVID. So to do mobility mapping, to understand the population density and movements, and the impact on of different lockdown, so non-pharmaceutical interventions, and that was not, and that is not still the case. There is a good example of the Alicante team that won the X Prize last month, that had access to data, but it was still in this sort of like ad hoc kind of way, and it was actually a team that sort of knew how to do it. So indeed, we're with this guide, with this handbook, we are trying to scale, to diffuse, to democratize this kind of knowledge. So the second module is about the key challenges. And so I think by now, after 10 years, they are of doing that, they are well known. So there are, of course, legal challenges. And so you see, of course, I'm not going to click on every tab, but every time you click on it, so it opens up, and then you have some you have a case study, you have so key resources here, a summary of the key problems at stake. So privacy and security, of course, including group privacy, so not just individual privacy. So there's a long literature on privacy, the risks of re-identification, even with so-called anonymized or pseudonymized data. And so we try to give an overview of the state of affairs and the state of knowledge. Of course, there are so access challenges, capacity challenges, including cultural challenges. So concerns about how to start, where am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be on the front page of a newspaper if I engage in such a project? And then different technical challenges that have to do a lot with data themselves. So the fact that of course it's not because you have a 110% penetration rate in a country that the resulting data sets are representative, because people have different SIM cards, and some people have 2 or 3 cell phones, and so on and so forth. So this is well known, and there are attempts to correct for those kinds of biases, but so we go over some of those challenges. And so I'm going to go a bit faster on the next ones, just to give you a sense of the structure and the content. The module 3 is about stakeholders, so which I think is critical, because it's if you don't build trust, if you don't understand so the different incentives and constraints of people in the ecosystem in which you work, then there's a very high chance of failure. And so it's not theoretical. It's just we're as concrete as possible about how to engage those different stakeholders through mapping. And so from there, we have very concrete like recommendations and descriptions of the basic requirements for building a project, so the building blocks, and then a summary of resources here. The amount of content that is provided in the handbook is quite significant, but hopefully it is provided in a way that is easy to understand and digestible. Then there is the question of sustainability, of course. So including not only, but including of financial sustainability, so so-called business models. And this has been a big question in the field for a long time. There are lots of companies who are willing to do that, but there are still the question of can I cover my costs? I'm happy to do that for 2 years, but then for, let's say, for free, but then there needs to be a financial incentive. And so we also cover these aspects, and that's really not easy, because quantifying the value of those indicators and the insights is actually not easy. Module 6 is the most technical. So it's the one where we go through the value chain. So from data to insights, and it's really a step-by-step guide from so data collection, data access, storage, processing, etc. So to extract the signals in the data, because now we know that the goal is not to let the data out. It is to let the sort of the questions in and the answers out, and only those questions need to be shared. And so I will end by and so this is the summary of the kind of the feasibility tool, so that synthesizes, describes the project lifecycle. And so in closing, I just want to show this this dummy case. And so we thought that it would be nice to try and bring together all these different parts, so all the different modules, and provide an example and sort of like made up, fake example, so a dummy case or mock case study about a country that we named Dataland. And so this country has faced, in the context of COVID, has seen a lot of migrant workers, leave, a lot of nationals, coming back, and so the population density of the island has been changed dramatically. But the government and authorities and other groups don't really know how and where the population. And so, of course, that has a lot of implications for a number of things. I mean, we saw recently with the US that it has, in some cases, a lot of political implications, but more immediately, it has implications for if you have like a boat kind of shuttle system, then how to reroute the sea bus schedules to reflect the new population density. And so then we go through the different steps of this mock case. So we talk in practice about how the principles for digital development can be reflected in the development of the project. We talk about how the different stakeholders, so mobile network operators, can be involved, engaged, so convinced to be on board through different meetings, how to present them the foundations. And I will just take like 30 seconds to talk about this governance tool, I would say, this maybe a paradigm, so which is the code, which is an acronym that stands for Council for the Orientation of Development and Ethics, which was developed in the framework of the Open Algorithms or OPAL project that Rachel mentioned. And this code, I think, is very important for developing those projects. So it's a group of people who can serve as a sounding board, who can provide inputs on issues of on privacy, cultural sensitivities, but also relevance. And so it's also, I think it's very aligned with the principles for digital development, and it's also aligned with a conceptualization of privacy that is not just defensive. So it's not just privacy as protection, but it's also privacy as agency. It's privacy as inclusion and representation, to uphold the right of people to actually decide what they want to share, which is core to the notion of privacy. And so so then the project, the case study continues questions of sustainability, and then ends up with the last part, which is so the data to insights. So I will stop here, and so happy to answer any questions that you may have. So hopefully this will have given you I don't know, the desire to look at the handbook, and so yeah, I hope you will have as much fun and interest to look at it as we had to build it together with Dial. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I'm going to jump in here for the last part, spend just a few minutes talking a little bit about who this audience is really for, or who the audience is, and to talk a little bit about some additional kind of ways that we designed this. Can everybody see my screen? Should I take? Okay. Thank you. Okay, great. Thanks, Rachel. So we really intentionally kept the audience quite broad. Basically, we designed this for any practitioner looking to implement or learn how to implement an MD4D project. So those practitioners that want to convene stakeholders, apply platforms and systems in a country context, lead a project for sustainable development, those that really have the autonomy, power, and interest, yet maybe lack the practical knowledge to launch a project, those that really just want to build a body of knowledge around use cases or tools, and those that really want to work effectively with intermediaries to coordinate a project. Secondarily, it will provide supporting stakeholders from the broader MD4D ecosystem, such as regulators, policymakers, governments, that practical detailed guidance, excuse me, on how to deliver effective services to those who need it most. So that's a little bit about the who. I want to talk next a little bit about the how, like how we designed this and some specific design elements that we incorporated. As Manu mentioned, you've got the nav bar here on the left side. This handbook has really been designed so that the reader can either progressively work through all of the modules in sequence or jump directly to specific modules of interest, either using the navigation pane or using this table of contents itself. You'll see that there are case studies sprinkled throughout. So here's one on using M&O data to improve health services in Malawi. We have, I don't know, maybe a dozen of these sprinkled throughout. And then you'll also see there are areas where you can tap for more information. So Manuel showed this page earlier, but if you tap on the actual box, you can gain more information about that particular use case. And then if you click on the link, it actually takes you to the appendix where we have all of the use cases laid out, and we have about 40 of those. It's a repository of those. Icons representing and linking back to the principles for digital development. Let me just go to an example of that. So icons representing the principles are up here on the upper right of specific pages that they're relevant to. And then on those same pages, you'll see in dark blue text, an area of text where you can just hover your mouse over. And this is mostly optimal for viewing on a laptop, a desktop computer, or an iPad. So if you hover over, you don't have to, but it's optimal. If you hover over, you can see more information about that particular digital principle. Next, I'll show you the feasibility tool that Emmanuel touched on. You can enter it in two ways. Here is the landing page. You can enter it by using this button, Enter Feasibility Tool. Takes a minute to load on Hopper. And then you can also enter it through the nav bar here on the left. But this is really organized around the project lifecycle. And it's really a series of questions, considerations, checklists, tools, tables, really in order to guide users to design, plan, and implement their own MD4D project is how we really designed this. Lastly, or I guess next, I want to just call your attention to this last line down here, download the MD4D playbook and bonus content. So the MD4D handbook is, the MD4D handbook is presented in two ways. One is this online version, and another is a PDF version that you can download from here and share out, as well as the really fun mock case study that Emmanuel showed. You can download that as well as bonus content. And then lastly, I just want to say this is an iterative living document. We will continue to add to it over time, and we very, very much welcome your input. Please send any feedback, comments, or questions, and we will take it very much into account as we make this as effective and useful as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trish. That was really insightful. I got carried away. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Trish. We don't have any questions yet, but I think I have a couple I noted down while you were presenting. So I think this is for you, Rachel. While designing this model, what were the, or while you started implementing the model, what sort of challenges did you face around data quality? Because I was thinking about individuals that are probably spread across 3 different. Are you able to sift through to manage those sort of challenges to ensure that your data is unique to, per individual?
Good question, Chibi. And I think you've already started to highlight some of the challenges around data quality, which obviously, like you said, one of them is where you have people that are spread around many telcos. That's not much of a challenge when we start to do the analysis, but I think more of the challenge comes in when you have populations such as women, children, for example, the old, the poor in, in, let's say, developing countries, who may not be well represented in mobile network operator data. And I think that's one thing that we normally have to do, to really be clear about the limitations of who is represented and who is not represented in the data. The advantage, for example, around how to go around that challenge, it comes in with other secondary data sources that we can use to complement the model. So for example, you can complement it with data from the national census, or indeed other relevant data sources like that. So it's just important to note that when we champion mobile data for development, we are not necessarily saying that mobile data or data from mobile network operators is, the bullet that it's going to solve and answer all the questions around population dynamics. Rather, it is the combination of mobile data and other data sources that is actually going to help us to reach a place where we fully understand dynamics of these populations. Thank you, Chibi.
Thank you, Rachel. That was very helpful. And the other thing coming to mind now is this handbook, because I'm going to really spend time looking through it. And I very useful for a lot of implementers, being able to have this demographic data to, put across or triangulate with your program data. So is the handbook such that it's a plug and play, right? I don't know if you've had scenarios where you've had it piloted in any other locations outside your area, and how, I know there'll be different contexts to different locations and challenges, but have you had any other other pilots using this handbook, and how easy it has been to, implement in a new location? I'm not sure who would take.
Well, I'll just say, today we go live. So today is the day that we're opening it up. So we have not piloted it quite yet, but really looking forward to doing that and getting feedback on it, and really looking forward to how people are using it and how effective it is.
Awesome. Okay, I see the contact us here. I'm just going to check. So there's contact details in case, anyone wants to reach out for other help or assistance. So I think that helps already.
If I can just add one quick comment.
Yes, please, Emmanuel.
So just to what Trish said, So it's the first time that it goes live. But so on the one hand, it actually benefited from a lot of knowledge from Dial and DataPub, but also others. And so we've asked for feedback, and we sent a survey, and we had people commenting and providing use cases. And so it sort of reflects, I think, the I would say the state of the art in the field. But of course, it will be improved over time via. Just the second quick thing I wanted to say is that I think we shouldn't focus only on the data. And so the point that Rachel made about the complementarity, of course, of let's say traditional and non-traditional data is a perfectly valid one. But it's also, as we all know, there's also the complementarity in the institutions, in the skills and the perspectives that these different data holders bring. And so you need the telco perspective and tools and resources. You also need the epidemiologists, the sociologists, the activists. So it's we've tried to reflect that in the handbook. So it's just a technical guide for how to extract. It's also how to create trust, how to create connections between people, so that there can be change with these data as a sort of the fuel for changing and improving the machinery.
Wow, very, very interesting. Thanks, Emmanuel, for that addition. I think we've done. We'll be going on a break now. I think there's a 15-minute break before the next session. I really want to say thank you to Rachel. This is very good. Personally, I'm sure the participants are probably still trying to digest everything you said. We're going to take time, go through the handbook, but I think this is very insightful, and I'll definitely be reaching out, for more insights on this handbook. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chibi. Bye.
Thank you.
So
Bye-bye.
much.
Nice day.
Bye-bye.